Today is day 6 of the Senate Finance Committee's mountain-moving toil to consider more than 500 amendments to the health reform bill. The Finance Committee today considered an Orrin Hatch-sponsored amendment that was meant to doubly, triply restrict abortion coverage in the bill. Republican Senator Olympia Snowe joined the Democratic opposition to defeat Senator Hatch's amendment. It would have required women to buy extra insurance for abortion services. You know how everybody plans a really long time in advance to have lots of abortions? Yeah, Senator Stabenow of Michigan put her objection succinctly.
With all respect to my friend, as a woman, I find it offensive.
The vote against the abortion ban was 10 in favor, 13 opposed. The one Democrat voting with Senator Hatch on the side of the conspiratorial fear that health reform will mandate abortion somehow was Senator Kent Conrad of North Dakota. We will have more on him in just a moment. Also considered by the Finance Committee was an amendment to doubly, triply clarify that the bill will not cover illegal immigrants. Because you lie, you know. Democrats defeated that amendment as well.
A rather dreadful amendment, and I say that for the following reasons. We already have requirements for people, undocumented immigrants, etc., taking advantage of Medicaid and CHIP who want to do that.
It was a relatively strong day for the Democratic majority today, as opposed to yesterday, which was kind of abysmal. Conservadems on the committee yesterday not only voted against the public option for health reform, they also voted in favor of providing federal money for abstinence-only education. Abstinence-only education, better known as the best teen pregnancy and STD delivery system politicians have ever devised. In fact, this week, some school districts in Texas announced plans to end their abstinence-only education curriculum. Why? Because abstinence-only education doesn't work. Texas currently ranks 3rd for the highest teen birth rate in the country. A teenager in Texas gets pregnant every 10 minutes. Coincidentally, Texas also leads the country in the amount of government money spent on abstinence-only education. Still, 2 Democratic senators, Blanche Lincoln of Arkansas and Mr. Conrad of North Dakota, voted for $50 million of abstinence-only funding, which President Obama had removed from his budget proposal earlier this year. Senators Lincoln and Conrad were not alone in their conservademness this week. Senator Ben Nelson of Nebraska, perhaps the most conservative of the conservadems, confirmed yesterday that he is completely opposed to using budget reconciliation rules, a simple 50+1 majority, to pass health reform. As Sam Stein of the Huffington Post has reported, Ben Nelson supported the use of reconciliation to pass not one, but 2 of President Bush's tax cut packages. Senator Nelson also told a crowd this week that any health reform bill would need not just a simple majority of 51 votes, or even a supermajority, filibuster-proof 60 votes, but he said it should have a super-duper-duper-duper majority of 65 votes in the Senate in order for him to consider it legitimate. Greg Sargent of Plumline points out today that Senator Nelson's most acclaimed legislative accomplishment, the one for which he pats himself on the back most readily, especially on his website, is the stimulus bill. Quote, his efforts helped target the bill more on job creation and tax relief to turn the nation's troubled economy around. That bill that Ben Nelson is so proud of passed the Senate 60-36. Didn't get that 65-vote threshold. Last night, we pointed out that Senator Nelson won his first Senate term with 51% of the vote, his second with 64% of the vote. Fortunately for Senator Nelson and the stimulus bill on which he brags, his new supercalifragilistic standard has not been adopted retroactively, so those things apparently stand. Joining us now is Huffington Post political reporter Sam Stein. Sam, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Does Senator Nelson have any explanation for why he was for budget reconciliation rules for Bush's tax cuts, but he's not for it for the Democrats' legislative agenda?
Not surprisingly, his office has yet to return my request for an explanation. Like you mentioned, in 2001 and 2003, the senator supported using reconciliation to pass the tax cuts. In 2003, he ended up being the 50th vote on that critical piece of legislation, which allowed Vice President Cheney to cast the tie-breaking vote. In both those cases, he cited the impact that would have on the budget, which is the traditional use for reconciliation. In this case, I guess health care doesn't have budgetary impacts. I'm not quite sure if that holds water. But no, they haven't provided an explanation and does seem widely inconsistent, as arbitrary as this 65-vote threshold seems.
Senator Nelson has picked this 65-vote threshold. We have heard from other Republican senators all summer long, and even now, them saying things like, oh, health reform needs 80 votes, health reform needs 75 votes. Is it all the same strategy? Is the idea to just raise the hurdle so high that there's no chance any bill could ever get there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think to suggest that the Republicans are interested in passing comprehensive reform is to be delusional with oneself. And let me point out that Representative Grayson's lament was as much towards Republicans for being obstructionists, but it was more towards Democrats for trying to negotiate with Republicans on health care reform. For him and for others in the progressive community, the time for negotiation has long since passed, and his frustration is that we still go to the table, as in Barack Obama, Democratic leadership in Congress, expecting a vote here or there. In all actuality, the only vote that Democrats are holding out hope for is Olympia Snowe. I talked to some people who think that she will be on board in the end, but the party needs to start operating on the 60-vote threshold minimum. I talked to Senator Tom Harkin today, and he demands that everyone at least vote for cloture, which would give 60 votes to defeat a Republican filibuster. I think that's the end game right now.
That seems to be shaping up to be the important procedural thing, the important procedural factor, which is going to make a decision, make the difference in terms of whether or not we get health reform or not. We discussed it on this show last night with Charles Schumer and then with Howard Dean, both of them, I guess, imparting the political importance of Democrats being held to a standard in which they vote to vote. They vote that there can't be a filibuster. They don't side with the Republicans saying there has to be a 60-vote majority. How widely is that accepted among Democratic power brokers in Congress?
Well, to tie to the very beginning of our conversation, I did a report on how this was the new strategy for Democrats in the wake of a special appointment to the Massachusetts Senate seat to replace Ted Kennedy. I noted that a couple months ago, Ben Nelson, of all people, had hinted that he would support he would support cloture to end a Republican filibuster. As about a few hours after my report went up, Senator Ben Nelson's office called me to correct the record. He is not committed to supporting cloture. He is keeping open the idea of supporting a Republican filibuster. So while there are people in the Senate like Tom Harkin, like Bernie Sanders, like Charles Schumer to some extent, who are demanding that everyone at least vote to have a vote, it's not, a done deal. There are people within the party who are willing to not follow leadership on this procedural hurdle.
I expect more pressure on that subject, both from outside groups, from activists, and from liberal members of Congress. Yeah. Sam Stein, political reporter for the Huffington Post, doing much to illuminate the situation for us. Thanks for your time tonight, Sam.
Thanks. I want to be on the Rick Berman hour, okay?
Okay, fair enough. It's not going to be kumbaya. I've been warned.
I don't want kumbaya.